Hi, everyone, and welcome to the final day of Stronger 2022. If we haven't met yet, I'm Allison Furneaux, the CMO of CyberSaint, and we're thrilled to have you back. Yesterday's sessions covered a variety of insightful topics from leading industry experts, and we yet again had hundreds of people from all over the world attend those sessions as well as our opening keynote. Today's schedule is packed with engaging talks. Feel free to check out the session recordings in the Replays tab, attend speed networking, and learn more about CyberSaint via our expo booth throughout the day. We have an inspiring panel that's about to begin, featuring thought leaders in cybersecurity, technology, talent, and investing. As we prepared for this panel, it became clear that this conversation is an important one to have. In the face of many outside forces, the cybersecurity industry is being forced to innovate, but these innovations can't happen without the proper investment, talent, and technology. Talking openly and hearing from experts like these here today discuss these issues will only allow us as a collective to become stronger in the face of adversity. With that, I'd like to introduce today's keynote panel, Surviving the Storm, How the Security Industry Survives a Recession. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speakers to the stage.
Certainly. Good morning, Keith.
Good morning, Padraic. How you doing?
I'm well, sir. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
So this panel, we're going to discuss sort of the overall impact on cyber with the changes in the global economy. We're going to talk about employment issues within cyber. We're going to talk about growth in the threat landscape, growth in the actual practice of cyber. We'll be covering a broad range of topics. I'm Padraic O'Reilly. I'm the Chief Product Officer and co-founder of CyberSaint. We're the sponsors of this conference. And Keith, perhaps you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Padraic. Hello, everyone. My name is Keith Skirbe. I'm one of the founding managing directors of Momentum Cyber. We are a cybersecurity-focused investment bank. I'm sure many of you may know us from our research and our content, speaking at conferences. But I said most of what we do really is focusing on cybersecurity M&A as well as capital raising. We serve as trusted advisor to boards and companies at all stages and private equity firms. And we work with companies to raise capital as well, typically later stage. So we're really excited to be on the panel today and looking forward to the discussion.
Me too. And we're just waiting on Deidre and Deidre and Chenxi, who are going to join us for this talk. All right. So we're just waiting a little bit on Chenxi and Deidre. So Allison's asked me to give a bigger introduction and talk a little bit about why CyberSaint put on Stronger. I think, I read Momentum Cyber's analyses. That's one reason we got Keith here. But I think more generally, why we put on Stronger, we're at a unique point in time in the development of cyber as an industry. And as an integrated risk management product, we get to talk to everyone. We get to talk to smaller manufacturers. We get to talk to large concerns across a lot of critical infrastructure sectors. So we're really in the middle of the conversation with respect to risk management. That's, for me, been one of the real pleasures of starting the company and seeing it grow. Working with so many professionals in cyber around risk management. And as the threat landscape has continued to evolve and change, as the ransomware crises were hitting last year, the conversations picked up in velocity. You know, I get to talk to the C-suite, I get to talk to the board, I get to talk to investors, I get to talk to smaller concerns, like I said, and risk management has really, really come into play and is maturing as a function. And we just happen to know so many people in information security because we deal with the endpoints, we deal with sort of the data lakes in cyber, we deal with the compliance and regulation frameworks, and we also deal around some of the financial and business decisions with respect to cyber. It's an absolutely fascinating nexus, and really the central problem in cyber right now is translation and getting the practice of cyber across the organization. So we're in a unique place with respect to translation layers. And for that reason, really, we're kind of the ideal host to set up a conference around the practice of cyber. We just happen to know so many folks, and the conversation is always open and ongoing. And here's another individual joining the conversation now, Deidre. Perhaps you could give a brief intro of yourself.
Yeah, unfortunately, Chenxi and I were stuck in digital atmosphere. Hopefully, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, it's great to be with you, and hopefully, Chenxi, if you're listening, push on the icon on the right and see if that helps. So hello, everybody. Yes, I'm super excited to be in this conversation. I'm Deidre Diamond. I'm the founder and CEO of CyberSN. We're the largest technology talent firm focusing on critical infrastructure, which is cyber practitioners. That's how I see it. While also disrupting job switching and matching with our job platform. So it's good to be with you. A lot of data. We're in 12 states and see hundreds of thousands of jobs. Oh, there's Chenxi. Which one was it? Upper right. There you go. That was a nightmare.
All right. Well, now the party can start.
Right.
That's right.
Apologies. We were a little bit challenged technically. I'm the moderator, and I'm stuck in digital Neverland. All right, well, let's get the panel started. I guess everyone has introduced themselves but myself. So my name is Chenxi Wang. I'm the founder and general partner of Rain Capital. I have been in cyber industry for a long time. I'm not going to tell you how long it is, but I've known these esteemed speakers for a while now, and also Allison, and thank you for inviting me to the conference. Today, we're going to talk about the macro picture of what's going on in the industry around the globe and how that impacts security and impacts our respective tasks. And I just want to set the context for the discussion, and then I will invite the panelists to jump in. So this is really an interesting time for us. Not only the market is volatile, we have the larger geopolitical conflict. We have the Russia and Ukraine situation, and we also have pretty tense situation over in Asia right now. And a lot of geopolitical factors impact supply chain, impact global business, and impact companies that are in multiple geos. And on top of that, and this week and last week have been very interesting for the cybersecurity industry. Last week, we have the trial of Joe Sullivan started, who was who is the former CISO of Uber. And this week we have Mudge, who was the former head of security at Twitter, is testifying in front of the Senate. So all these factors are changing or impacting the role of CISO and the role of security leadership, and in turn, they impact how we conduct business in the security industry. So we hope to dig into some of these issues within this panel. So without further ado, I'm going to start. I'm going to invite Padraic to jump in first to look at, with this backdrop, right? You are out talking to customers, talking to head of security all the time. How do you think, or what do you see this macro picture? How does it impact their day-to-day work? Are they, do they have budget taken away? Do they still have healthy budget, healthy investment? What are you seeing out there? Give us a picture.
Sure. Yeah, it's a varied picture on the ground, but there are some overall trends I think that you could speak to. We certainly earlier this year saw a trend toward maybe the budget cycle, compressing a little bit, and decisions being put off a little earlier in the year. That seems to have passed. Another thing we saw immediately was a switch to focus on revenue, and more of a, in cyber growth companies, more of a, shrinking of the run rate a little bit and kind of getting a little lean and mean just in this environment. That impacted us slightly, but, in some ways, it was a good thing because it made us look at sort of how can we be in this for the long haul. And I think that issue of how can we be in this for the long haul is a very important one. And in some respects, I think cyber is slightly recession-proof, particularly if you look at the growth rates of the threat actor landscape. They far outstrip the growth rates of just general economies, and the threats are not going anywhere, right? So when the conversation is happening around, are we resilient? That conversation has become very focused, and some of the events of last year have really clarified what security teams have to do. The thing I'm seeing now is how can we do this most efficiently, right? How can we look at business processes that just are legacy and are costing us, lost hours, getting us bad data, just needing to get much more efficient around risk management. And there's a lot of regulatory pressure as well. And I would say that, you can set up a few dynamic systems. You can say, as the threat landscape increases, regulation has stepped up. As regulation has stepped up, boards and C-suites have responded with a lot more interest around how they do risk, because they're going to have to report out on it. So we're seeing a lot of activity and rapid maturing around risk management and cyber at the moment. And I think that has a lot to do with just the general overall landscape we're in.
Yeah, so more focused on risk management and rapid maturing of the practice on the ground. Keith, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, listen, from my perspective, I agree with what Padraic is saying. I mean, if you look at people out there say, yes, cyber is recession proof. Cyber is very resilient. If you listen to CrowdStrike's recent earnings call, George Kurz came out and said, cybersecurity is not a discretionary line item. And there's a lot of truth to that, right? If you look at, talk to CIOs, COs, CFOs, and board of directors, cybersecurity is one of their top priorities. So with that, budgets are moving up and to the right. The numbers are big depending on who you're looking at and which research you're looking at, but they are showing up and to the right. So for me, for us, where we spend most of our time in kind of the M&A markets, it's really is, how does that translate to M&A, in these kind of uncertain times? And, we had done a panel kind of back at the start of the pandemic, just a couple of years ago. And we kind of went back and looked at, data over the last, call it 20 plus years. So going back to, 2000, 2002, when we had the dot-com bubble, we had the 9/11 attacks, the Great Recession in 2007, 2009, and even at the start of the pandemic. And when you kind of look at the M&A volume and look at financing volume in cybersecurity, it tends to decrease over those periods, but followed by significant, rebound over the subsequent years. When you look at the actual number of transactions that are happening, the window is a little bit tighter, where we'll typically see a decline in deal activity within that first year, but then it kind of comes back, in the subsequent years. And, if we take the pandemic, for example, and, we love data at Momentum. We have a lot of data just to kind of share some of the numbers with you, which I think are pretty interesting. We look at, 2020, we saw a 30% decline in M&A volume to 20 billion. And about a 7% decline in deal activity over 2019. Now you follow that up with last year, as we all know, was a record year in cyber, where we had over 80 billion of M&A volume, which was over a 300% increase over 2020. And our deal activity increased over 60%. And then, you kind of fast forward to where we are today in 2022. Listen, we've definitely seen a slowdown, relative to last year, which was a record year. I don't think, a lot of people had expectations that we were going to surpass last year. I mean, that was a very high bar that was set in cyber. But, the deal activity, the volume is down year over year. But we're still well above pre-pandemic levels, north of 50-60% above pre-pandemic levels. But if you kind of look at where we are, kind of over the last few months, if you think about when the Fed started talking about increasing rates, which was back in March or started in May, then they increased in June and July. The summer months typically in cyber are fairly slow. But, we saw, a 30% decline in just M&A volume and deal activity over the last year. And, as we kind of start getting into late parts of the summer, August, was the slowest month we've had in over 2 years. There was only 12 announced deals in cybersecurity in the month of August, which is, unheard of. So as we kind of go into the back half of the year, my expectation is that, activity should start to pick up. I think there's a lot of opportunity for companies who are looking for really good technology, good teams. Our valuation environment is much different than it was earlier this year. If you look at our public comps, our public high growth comps are down 35%, median forward multiples. Our low growth comps, which have a little bit more balance of growth and profitability, are only down 10%. So, what we're seeing is, investors, strategic buyers are taking a more measured approach to M&A. They're scrutinizing M&A a lot more, definitely digging in around the numbers, around the burn, trying to, kind of adjust, and balance that growth versus profitability. So I expect we'll see activity pick up here, in the back half of this year. But it's going to be very measured, and deals are taking longer. We've got a few deals in market now, and things are definitely taking a bit longer. But that's again why people are very focused and scrutinizing M&A deals more so than they have in the past.
Being measured is probably the right approach, right? Because last year was a little too crazy, I think, for all of us. And so maybe last year is a blip, and we just go back to the normal growth. So Deidre, back to you. You are in the talent business, but you talk to many, many security companies and also high-tech companies. From your perspective, do you see a change in the market dynamic, and how does it impact your business?
Yeah, absolutely. Talent firms of scale. I think there's an echo, but hopefully not. Talent firms at scale can see economy changes before the rest of the world, and I've noticed that from being in it since the early 90s. So I've seen that at scale. So yes, for sure, I can tell you. So at any given time at CyberSN.com, you can see every job that is posted in the last 45 days in cybersecurity in the commercial space, except direct fed jobs. And so that decreased. We saw it start the decrease in the beginning of August, and it's now down 12% as of today. So we were somewhere around 107,000 jobs the majority of this year or this year. Now we're down to 96 or so. And where we see that decrease is in offensive cyber and architecture, which makes sense when budgets tighten. You know, we're gonna stick to, instead of the red team threat hunting DevSecOps, it's more you know, operations versus threat hunting, and being proactive. More reactive is what happens, and so that's unfortunate and yet true. And we are seeing, in replace of some of those roles, more machine learning and AI requirements in other security roles that we haven't seen before. So it's quite interesting. So it's sort of like, you know, when things shrink, it's like, oh, let's have more people do more jobs in one, right? That's what happens. And then we have retention issues, and we're going to, which we already have. So I am very concerned about the state of the mental health of our professionals. I have been on stage speaking about this for 8 years. We are already stressed, and this concerns me. That being said, we are short 1 million cyber professionals today. And that is, we have just under 1 million, and that includes governments stats. And so it is resilient space because we're short those people. And those are people that have to have experience. When we say these are jobs that are open, these are jobs that are for experienced professionals. So, you know, resilience because we have a shortage, not resilience in that this is a national security issue, that we don't have enough talent. Our talent isn't being cared for in the right perspective. And when budgets tighten, that means it's going to be more about compliance, less about security. And the companies that are going to win are the ones that invest in security professionals right now, the people themselves. Because let me tell you something, cyber professionals, beyond all professionals, and I have many cyber professionals that work at my firm, and they have tenure, 6, 7 years with me. They are the most social servant people I've ever met, and they don't really care about money in some way that's what breaks them out of where they're at. That's what everybody tells, you know, people when they leave, because they don't want to tell the real stuff. What they want is a home and to be cared for like the rest of humans, but in a greater capacity because they want to focus on protecting. And so, you know, we will see a lot of companies win over the next couple of years in terms of how they treat their cyber talent and keep their cyber talent. I'm happy that my clients are those types of people, and yet it is a scary place to watch the vulnerability.
Yeah, I think actually a recession or a market downturn actually separates out, you know, strategic companies versus those who are not. And the strategic companies are the ones who come out winning and actually will pull themselves ahead of the pack, because I've seen this in the past, right? So they use this downturn to really put together the fundamental practices to put together the right team. And I've seen lots of companies that I work with, they actually now is knowing this is the right market to recruit. They being very strategic about who they bring on board and put together the right makeup of the security team and security architects and cloud security talents, for instance, and they will be better positioned to go forward when the market does come back. And I want to come back to Padraic for a second. When you are talking to security leadership in different companies, given that the market the way it is, and what are they still investing? You know, what sort of functional areas in terms of security are they still putting in further investments versus those that they may be investing lightly or stop investing? Yeah,
that's a fascinating question. It's been really interesting to watch over the last, say, 9 months. What we're seeing generally is, you know, some business process analysis effectively. So, you know, Deidre makes a really good point about just general overall stress levels in cyber. Cyber individuals, information security professionals are a unique breed, you know, and they are incredibly hardworking. And when, you know, some of the problems that they face are really classic problems in the space that have weighed on them for a long time, you know, like how do we get the data, you know, from the operational side into the compliance and regulatory side, and how do we talk about that with respect to risk, and how do we talk about our day-to-day practice and how it relates to the overall decisions we have to make in remediation and increasing resilience. It's an incredibly, it's a challenge. It's like Atlas holding the globe over their head. And what we see right now happening is that companies are just trying to be smarter about it. They're trying to look at what they have done in the past. And I just got off a call this morning where we reviewed what the company had done in the past with respect to their security program. They had ambitions to bring that across many more divisions, but those ambitions were kind of stymied by a few changes within the organizational structure. And now they're level setting, they're resetting, and they're resourcing. So, they're looking at, do we have the people we need to do this? They're looking at, can we leverage, a product to help us centralize this? So again, just gaining greater efficiency. I think companies are becoming very smart around this. Also, the C-suite and the board are sort of, waking up in a sense around cyber as a business function. Regulation is putting more pressure on them to report out in a credible way as to what they do with respect to cyber risk management. So that's also, I think, contributing to the greater overall trend. One of the brilliant trends I see is some of the largest consultancies on the planet realize that they're having huge churn among their younger employees.
You're not talking. Can you mute your mic? Because there is a feedback.
Oh, sorry. They're losing some of their real worker bees. Some of the people who do the day-to-day ops stuff are so overwhelmed when they get thrown legacy spreadsheets at them, are told to, generate, endless reports. They basically work 80, 100 plus hours a week generating this stuff. So they're looking to find ways to get employee retention by putting some of these models that they've used, which are brilliant models, into softwares like ours that can just speed up the entire process, doesn't overwhelm the workforce, and can generate some of the insights that business leaders need to make decisions around cyber risk. So I'm seeing a lot of emphasis on, not driving employees completely bananas. Frankly, I'm seeing a lot of that.
So you're talking about automation efficiency is key. Are there other areas that you see that having received increased investment and other areas have received decreased investment?
Yeah, I mean, automation, I think, and I didn't really touch on that, that's another area right now. So I just, again, got off a call yesterday where I was giving an update on a product we're looking to integrate with to a company, and they already use that product. And they were thinking about the gains in efficiency they could see if they were to just plug in our products together. And they were using words like brilliant, fantastic, amazing, because they know rolling that across their entire.
Sorry, Keith, can you mute? I think you're having a little bit of feedback, Keith.
Yeah, they know rolling out that across their entire organization. If they're able to gain some efficiencies by taking data they already have and getting it into a centralized sort of system of record, they're going to be able to drive those conversations up to the C-suite and the board a lot faster. They're also going to be able to get buy-in. And that's something you really need when it comes to cyber professionals, because there's so much work to do. You can't just throw them like a new set of tasks without it, having an overall context. They're buried to begin with. So if there are ways to sort of take something they're already doing and combine it with something they're familiar with, that's a real big winner.
Great. So Deidre, from your point of view, earlier you talked a little bit about you're seeing companies are maybe not investing as much in talents in proactive tasks such as threat hunting, red teaming, but going more back to the basics, operations. Is that across the board, or is that sort of ad hoc phenomenal? And also, are there other areas in terms of staffing up the team folks are investing less versus others? Just trying to tease out some trends here.
Yeah, totally. Yes, it is across the board. Those are national stats. We don't see any particular region making a difference. What is happening that along with this, challenge we have with the economy, we also have just coming out of COVID where all cyber professionals got to go remote, and now many organizations want to get off of it, get back in the office. And that is causing an extra disruption, because I can tell you that West Coast companies are not requiring that. Literally, it's that cut and dry. West Coast companies aren't requiring coming into the office at all. They are requiring being on a Pacific time zone or Central time zone because, paying attention to stress of workload, the time zones can make a big difference on how a team is impacted on their workload of time. And the East Coast is struggling. It's quite interesting to see the difference. It's so significant that we are having executive meetings about raising prices for any client that is going to make it a must-have to be in the office on a weekly basis, whether it be one day or more, it doesn't matter. The community doesn't want that job, that the cost of the sale and the time it takes to find somebody that would do that is so significant that we need to charge more for that service. And so, we're the trend of tightening budgets is there, but it's 12%. This is what we're seeing. Everybody else is moving forward. They cannot afford. Their staff is already stressed out and overworked. If they put these jobs on hold, they're going to lose this talent. And there is a war for the talent.
Hold on. When you say 12%, are you saying 12% of the companies you work with are decreasing budget, or the budget is decreasing 12% across the board?
12% of the companies are decreasing across the board. And everybody sort of did nothing for 30 days. It kind of same thing happened when COVID hit, although that lasted 90 days of doing nothing. We saw 30 days of just, it's as if everybody was frozen. What the heck just happened? How bad is it going to get? Conversations, everybody's in meetings. When you're talking about hiring talent, that kind of a stop means all the work that was gone to get the pipe for that talent is gone, right? So it is a stop for a talent agency that is fascinating on the perm side. Of course, on contract side, when economies take dips, nothing happens other than it goes up. It doesn't take a hit. You can't just, typically there's nothing to hit, so to speak. And so the interesting piece is now I was out with some of my team in Pittsburgh last week, and it was fascinating. Some of my younger teammates said to me, meaning newer to the business, I said, so what's going on? They said, well, did you notice that more people are responding to our contract roles than our perm roles? And I said, what? And I didn't notice. I hadn't looked in a long time.
Sorry, what's a perm role?
Permanent position, so people hiring people perm, like as employees, sorry, lingo, we forget, versus contract employment. And so now cyber professionals are applying to contract roles more than they're applying for permanent roles. That is a major shift.
That's interesting. Is it because remote working, they can do contract roles, or do you see other reasons?
First thing I did is go look at that data and start talking to, my delivery team across the country and just really diving into it. And it is literally a result of nobody really takes security seriously. I've been around long enough between politics and internal issues. I'd rather be a contractor because I don't have to care. I don't have to deal with the politics. Yeah, I know it's trippy. And yet makes sense. That usually is what happens to very skilled people in general, is they get to choose where they want to work and what capacity and what, right? So that is what's happening. These are skilled professionals that can come in and do a job. They don't have to commit to the organization or be involved in the conversations that drive them crazy, which is this, difference between compliance and security.
I do see a lot of companies that still don't take security serious enough, right? Just last week, there's a pretty large retail company, they riffed both their chief information security officer and chief privacy officer at the same time. And I was like, how can you do that, right? And but it does happen. So it's interesting that senior talents are switching to a contracting role. Are they contracting with one company, or are they contracting with multiple companies?
Well, that's the interesting thing. So, these are people that haven't been contractors before. In fact, my whole contract arm is full of people that were never contractors, but because of what we can offer, it makes sense and they get out of the politics. But to actually be responding to that versus us recruiting them to it is a totally different ballgame. And so, they are not contractors already. I mean, you see contracting in cyber, in the SOC, in the junior positions, the sort of new to cyber or analyst 1, analyst 2, maybe an analyst 3. But once you get past an analyst 3, the contract world didn't exist really. Now, consulting existed, and what's the difference? There isn't. You just pay more. And so, that world is shifting because of the unhappiness levels that have already been in place for so long, that it just happens to hit at this time too, in my opinion, because this is a result of I've been to 3 different or 4 different companies as a senior security professional, and I get the gig is not going to be one that is a lot of warm and fuzzies.
Yeah, it's a role that comes with a lot of pressure, but at the same time, it's kind of scary to me if a company is staffing their security operations all with contractors, because maybe I'm old school, but I think there's a lot of institutional knowledge comes with a permanent staff that is looking at your infrastructure, your applications, to protect them. And if you're in and out of the business, I don't know. I mean, it's a new trend. Maybe we all have to get used to it, but I don't know. I'm a little freaked out by it.
Well, one thing to remember, Chenxi, is in tech in general, there are more contractors than there are permanent employees. In IT, in applications development, in software, believe it or not, there are more contingent labor force than there is a permanent. So that's something that is a CapEx OpEx thing that started in 89 when the tax laws changed. And so, I think that you're right, that organizations see it that way. And now I think they're going to think CapEx OpEx like they do for a lot of other things. And it's very highly, possible that the shift happens. Or, when you're in demand, you have power. you're the buyer and the seller, right? So we might not have a choice, is my point, as employers.
That's interesting. I wasn't expecting that being the trend, but that's something I have to keep an eye on. So Keith, coming back to you, you talked a little bit about the volume of M&A is changing in cyber. Have you seen any specific areas of interest that's changing? Are people buying one type of cyber companies more than others? Anything you can talk to us about?
Yeah, I'd say, and these are trends that we've seen, kind of over the last couple of years, not necessarily specific to any kind of, economic uncertainty or downturn. But listen, I think at the end of the day, one of the biggest challenges, as we've all been discussing here, is just, the lack of jobs, not the lack of jobs, but the lack of talent with all these unfilled, cybersecurity positions. So I think, as we've gone through cyber over the years, we've gone through these cycles of, best of breed, to best of suite, back to best of breed. And now we're kind of in this best of breed suite, right? CISOs, CIOs, they don't want any more point products. They want to reduce the amount reduce the complexity, in their networks and their IT and security stacks. So I think a lot of the consolidation is happening is for companies that are, trying to offer a broader platform and to address those needs and those wants of, kind of the CISOs, the CIOs. So, you look at what Palo Alto has done over the years. They've made some big bets and made some big moves into certain areas in cyber, where they now have a very robust platform. CrowdStrike has done the same thing, just to kind of name some of the bigger players out there. But it's really about delivering a platform to address a lot of the issues that we're facing in cyber. I mean, I think from a sector perspective, we've seen a lot of activity around cloud security. AppSec is becoming more prevalent, more issues around, just think about the digital transformation, moving infrastructure to the cloud, moving applications to the cloud, utilizing more SaaS applications. That creates a lot more challenges. Think about API security is an area where we're seeing a lot of interest. But as we kind of go back to the issue in terms of employment, one of the things and one of the trends and the space that we've been really active in is kind of in the managed services space. Being able to kind of outsource, your kind of security operations, whether that's on a hybrid basis or a fully outsourced basis. So, we've kind of seen this whole evolution from, kind of EDR to MDR. We're talking about XDR, or some of the terms that are out there. But managed service has been one of the most active sectors, over the last few years here. And then for what this with CyberSaint and the Stronger conference, it's really about risk and risk quantification, vulnerability management. Kind of broadly speaking, risk management has been an area where we've seen the most activity from an M&A perspective. And there's a lot of different subsectors within kind of risk management, from risk quantification, like I said, vulnerability management to GRC, third-party risk management, is an area that's, has a lot of eyeballs on it, and definitely seeing a lot of activity there. But I mean, those are just some things overall. I mean, there's little pockets here and there of activity, but bigger picture, at the end of the day, it's really about, can you deliver a platform versus a point product, right? And then, are you innovating around addressing those issues of, being able to, does your product consolidate, a few other products that a CISO may have in its network? Does it reduce the amount of time that my analysts are working, and triaging alerts, right? So anything that's, we've talked about, you've talked about it, we've talked about here is just, building efficiencies and automation. Anything we can do. Now, you can't automate 100% cybersecurity. It's just, you still need people. But there is a good balance of, reducing, a lot of that kind of manual labor with automation. So I think some of the innovation and some of the activity we'll see around M&A is really going to be around, driving those efficiencies, driving the automation, and just making, security a lot more manageable within a company's environment. And, it's a balance that a CISO has to make because you don't want to compromise your risk posture, right? So I think that's something that that folks have to take into consideration as well.
That's interesting because some of the trends that you described, I certainly see. Right, one of the things is it's not just that people won't buy point products anymore, but they really need service support. If you look at CrowdStrike's data, right, so they actually are increasing investment in their services. And the CISOs I work with actually, many of them tell me that don't give me more products. What I want is help, right? Meaning that more people help, more services help to get these products into a stage that is actually working for us. So that's one. Another trend I've seen is people are done with security products that give them data, give them problems, give them reports, right? So what they want is security products that give them that, but also help them action. So that, being able to, the ability to respond, the ability to remediate is something that people are looking for. And so that's been a shift as well. So this flows into my next question, and we also have some questions from the audience I want to hit. I'm still seeing lots of innovation in the early stage because that's where I sit, right? So I look at emerging tech. Last I looked at modern identity companies, they're like, certainly in the last year, there are like 20 new startups in the identity management space, looking at, new stack of identity as an example. So the point is, innovation still comes fast and furious. How do you guys see, I'll just throw this out to anyone on the panel here. How do you see these new tech being assimilated into, or maybe not being assimilated into the tech stack of large companies that are doing, fairly sizable security operations? Where do you think the innovations would go if they're not assimilated? And how do you think the trend will last in the next 6, 12, and 24 months? Anyone?
I can speak to it a little bit. Maybe 6 months ago, I noticed a trend in-house for us. A lot of, innovative, endpoint companies were coming to us, just sort of saying, look, we're getting a lot of traction inside large companies, but they're ultimately asking us, how does this relate to our overall program? So the trend was to get away from sort of another unique sort of ecosystem of security with a unique dashboard and a unique set of outputs, and more towards something that could rationalize itself throughout the entire program and relate to the larger vision. So I would say that, that the products that are coming into market, and innovation is coming fast and furious, that solves sort of the overall question of how does this relate overall to the general security posture and to risk more generally, will be more successful. Because what I think happened, we reached some sort of critical mass in cyber, and you can certainly see it when you look at just telemetry in general. There's a lot of it out there, right? If you were to sort of sum up all of the telemetry, you would be into orders of magnitude that are kind of mind-blowing. But how do you use that data? How do you use that data to inform your day-to-day operations? How do you use that data to make plans and to become more resilient over time? I mean, the broader overall project has to be kept in mind, even if you have a unique solution. So that's my take on that particular thing.
Yeah, and Chenxi, I'll just add to that. When I think about companies, we talked to a lot of companies. You look at innovation. I think in today's world, as we look at digital transformation, companies, startups need to be able to operate in a hybrid environment, right? It's not just on-prem and it's not just cloud only. I think you need to have a combination of both on-prem and cloud, whether that's public, private, whatever it may be. But being able to have, a cloud-native architecture that's very flexible, very scalable. You mentioned kind of identity, data security. A lot of these sectors that are very mature. They've been around for a very long period of time. But the challenge with some of those kind of legacy companies is that there's a lot of technical debt there because they've been very focused on-prem. Right. So when you move to a cloud and a hybrid cloud environment, the amount of complexity that you're adding, just think about identities. Now that you have, it's not just identities of people, it's identities of machines, right? As you think about servers and all of that. So being able to kind of manage that, from in a hybrid is just much more challenging. So startups need to think about, that's the environment we're in. That's where it's moving. But again, it's not just going to be all, we still need to have kind of on-prem because I don't think, on-prem is not going to go away. I mean, some companies have gone 100% cloud, but for the most part, being able to operate, in that kind of environment and address the needs of those hybrid environments. That's where I see, the innovation and really kind of, displacing a lot of that legacy, technology that's out there.
Right. I'd love to add to that. I mean, and we've seen that over the years of all technologies, right? Replacing new or old with new. And that is the time of today for sure. And if any new startup isn't thinking about augmenting talent, you know, saving time for talent, then they're not going to get bought, you know, unless it's innovation. And that would be innovation, because you just said it, Chenxi. What are product companies trying to do? Service support. Well, what's that other than people? You know, that's not technology, that's people. And so when I look at this whole thing, I think to myself, you know, as a sociologist by school, and really all I do is think about why people do what they do, you know, cyber crime economy, you know, like the drug crime economy is how I see what we're doing right now with softwares. We're following the quote crime. And right now identity is a big problem. So, you know, we've been, my chief security officer and myself have had this prediction just recently of, you know, smart zero trust architectures, you know, infusing AI and blockchain ledgers into ZTA context and data access, you know, like moving the person closer to the data with identity and authorization and context, you know, who, what, where, when, is really that, you know, once ZTA is implemented, infusing AI and blockchain, you know, with data access is really how we're going to be able to really audit identity. So I think that's where the movement's at. And like Keith, you said that too, and so did Patrick. You know, this is the biggest problem, and any new companies better be focusing on that. And you know, I just think funny that service support is humans. You know, like let's not forget that.
It is because I think we've hit a point in time that products and technologies, you know, sort of developed in an isolated fashion now have to work together. And so how do you make them into, like Keith talking about, a platform concept? But if they were not a platform to begin with, who's going to write the API integrations and who's going to pull the data together into a consolidated dashboard is people, right? And so if you don't have the people to do it, then you just can't walk into an organization selling them another sort of a product in silo. And that trend I've seen a lot. And so that means innovation will also have to be taken into account, that you have to play in the entire tech stack versus an isolated thing. And I'm sure all of you have seen that. So last question, I want to take some from the audience, because there were quite a few questions, and they were all mostly centered around this talent and employment question, right? So the one of the question is, how long do cyber people last these days at a company? Is it 2 to 3 years? Is it longer? Is it shorter? And I'll start with you, Deidre, and we don't have a lot of time, so let's be brief, and we'll hit one more.
At the C-suite, we're at about 18 months, which keep in mind that the average time to find a new role as a C-suite is 1 year. So if we're at 18 months, that means 8 months into employment, that professional starts looking for a job. That's a vulnerability in itself right there, another year of employment while job searching. I mean, we cannot blame these professionals. We have a broken job searching system that's a part of it, but the rest is the organizations themselves and how they interact, and what they don't even most of the time understand what they need when they go to hire. And so that is a big problem for the C-suite. Everybody else is around, you know, the 2 years at this point. We've seen a little bit of an increase. We think that's because of, you know, the economy. It really is scaring people to make a move. For, you know, last in is first out is, you know, what history has shown us. It doesn't mean it's true, just that's what history has shown us. So I think that, you know, it's getting better in the hands-on roles at the management seat. It's not getting better. And yet I don't think the hands-on roles is long-lived, because already what we've seen in this downturn, the few organizations that are squeezing on the security side is really turning people off. You know, it's a real turn-off.
So very quickly, Padraic and Keith, anything to add on the security talent market and also the trends of how we're going to use talent, how we're going to develop a talent going forward?
You know, it's interesting. I'll just add one in comment, because in Nikesh's prepared remarks around their recent earnings call. It's interesting, and Deidre, maybe you're seeing this, but they're tracking kind of rebound employees, right? So what they're actually seeing is people that are leaving the company, going to work at startups, working to go to competitors, but they're seeing an influx of people coming back into their own companies, which I think is pretty interesting. But that's just kind of, so I think about, kind of talent, retaining people, but, also trying to get some of those people that you've had, back into the fold because, obviously you want them to leave in the first place, but, they thought there was greener pastures, but they've come back home.
Yeah. And I would say just from my perspective, retaining talent is a major focus for us, because there's so much, sunk investment in a sense into your employees, and they know how things work. So I do think we reached some sort of critical mass there at the beginning of the year where we could see employees sort of flying around at a rapid rate, and there is some settling occurring now by my lights.
Great, thank you, everyone. And too bad we can't get to more of the questions coming from the audience. So we have we're coming to the end of our panel time, and this is a fairly broad set of topics we're trying to hit, talent questions, growth of the market, as well as where the innovation's going. Hopefully we can have this kind of discussions again in a few months, or maybe 6-12 months, to see if the greater market dynamics, if they have changed, how that impacts our outlooks on the security markets, the talent hiring, as well as the innovation. So more focused on automation, more focused on efficiency, more focused on services and platforms is what we are looking at today. And thank you for listening, and thank you for joining us. And hopefully you'll join the rest of the sessions today. Thank you so much. And thank you, panelists, for joining us.
Thanks, Chenxi. I'm a little, we didn't get to the Web3, so we'll have to save that for next time.
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to open up that can of worms.
Good to hear you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.